What's up, everybody? Welcome to the MSP Tea Room with me, Dean of Spicy Monday fame, and my co-host, Tara. Tara, what are you famous for?
I'm not famous, and I don't want to be.
Famous for being
But I really
sparkly.
liked our intro. That was really cute. I was like dancing.
This whole theme, Tea Room theme, I came to Tara and begged her to let me make a sparkly show. So thankfully she said yes.
And I have a teacup and a teapot.
So what are we talking about today? What is today's episode?
Are you asking me, or are you just
Yes,
like throwing this out there? We didn't. Okay, so we should probably preface this with we didn't practice this. This is all just we're figuring out this as we go. So we are talking today about Rite of Boom. We're recapping it and kind of what we saw, spill a little tea, and talk to two awesome guests. So yeah.
All right. What is Rite of Boom? Well, it is a now recurring annual conference in Vegas, cybersecurity focused, 2 tracks, business and tech. And I would say it is one of the few conferences that at least MSPs universally claim they love on the internet.
Yep. It's a good one.
It's sometimes a little spicy for vendors. Maybe we'll get into that today. But who do we have with us today to talk about Rite of Boom?
Well, first we have Kevin, and God, I would butcher this last name if I tried to say it. So we're gonna have to ask him unless you know how to say his last name. I've said it wrong every time. I'm pretty sure. Founder
and CEO of Tech Brews LLC, the premier micro MSP.
And then we also have Brandon Martinez. That's an easy last name.
Yeah, we have Not Raven Automation. We have Brandon, founder of ZenTop, the premier RPA consulting firm for MSPs.
Yes, we do. And we should bring them out. And I don't know how to do this. So I'm going to ask you to do it. There you go. Hi.
Kevin, Brandon, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having
Brandon, me. Thank you for filling in. We couldn't get the Raven guys here in time, so
I know. It's such a shame, but maybe you'll go next time.
Oh, God. Stop giving him shit.
This is for Josh. Pinky out. So yes.
Yeah, what's everybody have?
Oh, I have my cute little one I bought this morning.
I have a little cat.
I like the cat.
Say this is a cup. I believe I bought this over in Hong Kong, and I figure if we're having tea, what better place to get tea from? So, and I think yes, my little jar of jasmine tea I brought back too.
I love that. Awesome.
So, both of you, have you been to Rite of Boom before?
Yes.
Yep. This was my second Rite of Boom. I only missed the first one. I hit last year and this year's.
Brandon?
Awesome.
Yeah.
Brandon?
I started off, I think it was technically the second one in back when it was in Dallas. So Dallas, Vegas last year, and then Vegas this year.
So is this the 4th or 5th year it's happened? I've only gone twice.
I think it's the 4th year because there was one right before Dallas, I think.
I thought there was one in Tampa. Was there not one in Tampa? Dean, are you Googling this? You look very like...
I was frantically scrolling through our show notes to see if we had written it down.
We didn't. No.
It's 3 or 4. I don't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So since everyone, and Dean, was this your first time going or had you been before?
This was my first time at Rite of Boom. Yep.
Okay. So with you not going before, what like initial impressions or expectations did you have going in, or did you even have any? I mean, I know you. I
already. The conference has a reputation, so I already knew about it anecdotally. I was there more just to enjoy the ride. There's a couple of shows every year that I see, like on Reddit, especially. No one from the MSP standpoint ever complains about. And this is one of them. So I was kind of curious going there as a vendor just to see what that looked like for MSPs.
Okay. Brandon, same question. Kevin, same question. Start with Brandon.
Yeah, so this is the third one there, and it has gotten a lot different over the past few years. I think they have had to deal with a lot of very huge, rapid growth of the conference itself. So expectations, it was hard to get them because this was the third time they changed the format. Initially, it was one core track for everyone. And then last time it was separating out into business and tech, but then it was still one kind of rough track out there. And this time they actually had two completely different sections. You were either business or you were tech. So I registered as tech, and then the owner of eTop and my business partner is MTop BJ registered for business. He wasn't able to make it, unfortunately, but I don't know. It was very different kind of by design.
Okay. Kevin, what about you?
This was my second Write a Boom. I actually joined last year on the vendor side. And my goal last year was basically check out the sessions. And I left with a very big maybe by the end of it. Things were okay, but the problem is I go to a lot of conferences and I read a lot on Reddit. I am in the MSP Geek forums or Discord a lot. So a lot of the content was a repeat for me last year. So I kept seeing there was always so much good stuff about Write a Boom. I'm like, you know what? I actually got a pretty good deal or I landed a pretty decent sized client, which actually enabled me to go. I mean, to go to these things is not cheap, especially like when you are a solo owner and I just don't have the income. But thanks to that one client, I was actually able to go. And this year, honestly, most of it was the same. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the details. I left with I don't know if I would go again if they do anything close to the business track.
Okay. That's actually the first person. You're the first one I've heard say that. So that's surprising to me. But we will get into that for sure. So since you guys both did different tracks, we're going to ask you guys basically questions about each track because I didn't go to any. I'm going to be honest. This is a really long event Vegas is a lot and I've only gone as a sponsor. So leaning on you guys here for some of this. But what were the hot topics on each track this year, do you think?
Yeah, tech-wise, it was a pretty decent spread. And as always, everything put on by ACM, Black Hills, those guys over there was fantastic and a pretty decent spread as far as different ways to approach, doing threat hunting on the network. They really kind of embraced the whole Write of Boom where it was like after the breach. And then a little bit around the, like how C2 stuff works. Some of the other vendors there who were running the sessions, though, it was not just me who kind of picked this up. I heard it a lot kind of around the hallways. A lot of them kind of felt more like sales pitches. Some of the vendors were good where it was just kind of like, we're going to give you general knowledge and you're going to use our tool to get there, which is fair. I mean, if you're going up as a representative for the vendor, as long as the takeaway from it is generalized enough, you can learn, that's good. But there were other vendors where the last half of it kind of felt like a captive sales conversation, and it was very much like this is all the cool awesome things we do as a company and why you should use us for your incident response and stuff like that. But overall, I mean, pretty standard, intro to cybersec. It's I think the best audience for that are people who are in a role that wants to lean more into cybersecurity and has that really eager excitement of like, they don't really know a whole lot about it and they want to get hands on keyboard and they want to type the cool hacker stuff on the computer. Like, that's awesome. But on the tech track, I was kind of expecting maybe a little bit more as far as technical process development versus, like threat hunting and stuff. I think it's valuable to know, but for a lot of MSPs, when you get to that Write a Boom point and something happens, you're not the one doing the hands on keyboard, nor should you in most cases. That's kind of the point where you shut up and you call cyber insurance and you let them get counsel for you and you let that counsel hire an actual DFIR firm and you let them do their work. So, kind of that in-between point where it's like, oh, shoot, something major has happened. How do we classify this as an incident to when we start calling for the big guns is kind of that perfect sweet spot. I think a lot of technical people would get more benefit out of.
So Brandon, who do you feel is the intended audience then for that show? Like who should be attending based on that feedback?
This show has always trended more towards people in management roles. And I think the first year I went in Dallas, there was a really nice blend. It was very focused on what happens in that kind of mid-slice point for the MSP. And I think as time has gone on, it's tried to kind of branch out into a more general cybersecurity conference, which is good, but I think maybe some of the focus is being lost along the way. Not to say the content was bad per se, but it seems like they're trying to cover a wider net than maybe would be useful to them. There's a lot of conferences out there that are super technical and for entry-level people. I think the big benefit to the first year we went, was this is specifically for leadership to learn how to do things, and it was a nice blend of the technical and the business. And potentially that split between technical and business that's happening, where you get one or the other, is kind of a side effect of the rapid growth of the convention as far as size and attendance too, trying to cater to more people while also being less specific by trying to be more specific, if that makes sense.
Well, what you brought up is interesting, because it causes challenges for vendors as well, because that initial conference, as you described it, that has sort of a manager persona, is going to have people there from MSPs who are capable of buying. So vendors, if I have 300, 400 attendees, but they're all buying personas, hooray! But now if we make that conference more approachable or appealing to employees, like we've seen other conferences starting to do, that's awesome, because the community gets pulled in. We get lots of people, but now I get a bunch of techs, and I love talking to them, but they probably can't buy anything. And
so I'm going to chime in though. Because I love those kind of conferences because of the community aspect, but also they become champions if they actually like your product, right? So I'm just saying, I know you champion us, Dean. So I don't ask you.
So to that point, did you all hear about the Huntress pre-day that everyone was, to Tara's point, everybody was championing it. All the employees went to it. They loved it. And that was like the talk of the town. They did the giant board game. I didn't go to it. It was like a giant board game. People loved it. They didn't feel like it was a pitch slap, like you guys were saying.
Yeah.
Did either of you go to that?
I did not go to that one. Which one did I go to? I'm trying to remember which one.
I went to Sophos's, which I happen to be a Sophos partner. But even as a Sophos partner, the pre-day was not a Sophos sales pitch. I actually give my hats off to those guys there. That was probably one of the better ones, as opposed to some of the main stage sessions that I sat through on Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, and I think the framework of how Huntress's pre-day was structured was kind of to the original point, where it's like it's targeting people, the people who are able to mostly implement the idea of an incident response plan and the practice of it are going to be managers, because that's something you got to drive from the top down in the organization. That doesn't mean that people who are on a more technical front facing side can't get value out of it, because they're going to be participating in that in their organization. So something they can take back is, even though they can't drive it internally from a management or operational perspective, they know what good looks like. They've done this and they're like, this is fun, and I came back learning something, and they can take that feedback back to their team. And that's something where you get a lot of value altogether from really all areas of the business, compared to, here's a session, while it is useful information to know of, let's say you have an attacker on your network and you need to figure out where they are. It's fun to have a VM and type the commands in and see what happens, but unless you're in a role that is actively doing regular incident response, it kind of makes me question what kind of value that brings to an standard MSP attendee. Are you going to have, if you're bringing your tier 1, tier 2 guys there, is that something you want them to be doing at your MSP? Is that something that it's like, it's cool, they know the knowledge and they had fun doing it, but like, is that going to give you a return on the investment it took to send them out to the conference?
So I guess you're
interesting comment here.
Well, so this actually plays into another question I had. Do you think there were enough like real world strategies and things that anyone could take back for MSPs, or was it more, I guess, theoretical? Or
I think the struggle is you want it to be very hands-on and stuff, but as the thing I keep coming back to is, when you're an MSP and you're dealing with a large-scale incident, most of the time you don't want to be that hands-on with it. A lot of it is going to be the initial classification phase, the initial containment phase potentially, but then everything after that point, that's when you call your cyber insurance. When you try to handle it yourself, or you bring in your own third-party providers, insurance may not cover you after the fact. They may say that you interfered with it and you made it worse, or sorry, we have people that is already on our little Rolodex of authorized partners. We don't know who these guys are. We don't know the quality of their work, so we're not going to pay them out. When you have an incident like that, it's like once you kind of classify like, okay, this is the real deal, we need to do something about this, it becomes a business decision of what to do next.
Brandon, I don't immediately restore from backup and delete all evidence of the incident.
Yeah, no. You restore from backup, you set the server on fire, and you want to circle the parking lot. Those are the 3 steps to restore.
You need some salt around the server.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it. Okay. Sorry, I have to pour more tea.
Were there
sorry.
Were there any key sessions that really stood out to either one of you that were either really worth it or were just the most atrocious thing you've ever put eyes and ears on?
I feel like Kevin's got some feels on this.
I kind of do. Yeah. So, as a small MSP, it was definitely, and full disclosure, I absolutely hate sales and marketing aspects of owning a business. It's one, I can do it. I just absolutely hate it. It touches on the parts of my core being, basically just exploiting people or their feelings or whatever to get a sale is how most sales actually seems to work. Yes, you could absolutely quote me on that. And I very, very reluctantly went the business track, however many months ago when I purchased the ticket. Like I literally sat there debating between tech business. And I know the better part of me is like, I've got the tech part down. I need to shore up the business half of my head. And ultimately decided to go with the business track. And I'm looking at my notes on that screen over there. So I see me looking over there. And honestly, I didn't even see that much there that would be classified as right of boom. A lot of the sessions there actually all existed on the left side. It's the sales component of getting your MSP positioned where you can then engage on the right of boom. But all the stuff that was brought up was actually more left. And like, those are mostly things I've already heard. I don't like to do it, but I at least understand what's going on and I understand why it's there. And I do see value in it. But yeah, a lot of it, like I did have some good takeaways. Someone mentioned a good analogy for a pizza shop. You know, why an MSP isn't necessarily good as a MSSP. So go to a pizza shop and ask them to make a lasagna. Yes, the pizza shop has all the ingredients for lasagna, but they are going to suck at it. So do that same analogy. Yes, an MSP can have all the tools that an MSSP can have. They're not going to do a job, much like Brandon was saying.
So if we assume for a minute that Andrew and the team that put the conference together are not morons, there was some intentionality behind the tracks. Why do you think there was so much of that selling content that felt left of boom that seemed, at least to you, repetitive? Like, Andrew would not have intentionally been like, you know what, let me make a shitty track that no one's going to want. So why do you think that was there?
As the conference grows, there's a lot of need to cater to a lot of different MSPs all at once. And I did hear the feedback last year that people did want to have it split out. So I don't think this was a very unilateral decision where Right Boom as a conference was like, we're just going to decide to do this. Like, I think they got a decent amount of feedback that this was a way to go. And it feels like that every year they're trying to find what right is. And if I had one piece of feedback to give them, and everything I'm saying here, I've given directly in the, tell us our conference win survey. So feel free to correlate that if anyone there's watching it, but kind of settle in on what that track looks like. Kevin mentioned a lot of the left of boom, right of boom discussion. I remember, and maybe I'm just making this up, but when we were in Dallas for the very first one, they had the NIST pillars in the framework up on the big screen before every single session, and it said this session falls in here, this session falls in here, this session is the boom, this session is what happens after, this session was what happens before it. It was very, very structured of like, we are going to take you through start to finish, maybe not necessarily in order throughout these sessions, but start to finish as what it looks like as an MSP as you are dealing with a potential cyber incident, what you do to prepare for it, to classify it, to respond to it, to detect it, and then how do you engage incident response afterwards? Who do you talk to?
That would have been nice to know for this year.
Yeah, I think the biggest piece of feedback that I keep circling back to is like just kind of consider who you want the conference to be for. Is it for MSPs who are both breaking into having to contend with the fact that they're going to deal with cyber incidents eventually, whether or not they want to, and the MSPs who are potentially more mature along but always learning, or is it becoming just a general cybersecurity, which is great, but there's a lot of those, and it's very difficult to kind of do all of it at once.
Well, and probably thinking through like the strategy and almost the journey of the people sitting in each of these tracks. It would be nice if they kind of built on each other, if possible.
Yeah. And I know like they don't have open session calls, and I can understand and I respect why they do that for this conference, because they wanted to be very tightly controlled on the content side of things. And I think that worked very well when there was a single session. Andrew was able to very tightly create a story based on the people he picked.
I'm sorry, Dean, you have comments that would look because you went like this. So
I don't know, bro. I sat in some panels and those were sort of yikes. Like that did not feel tightly controlled or curated.
Some of the sponsored sessions were unfortunately like just borderline sales pitches for the different people who gave them. Nothing against them, and it was still very good information if you were at that point in your journey. But it's like, a lot of it also seemed like, hey, they kept bringing in all these different panelists and whatnot for multiple of the business tracks. And I mean, the panelists were all very good. They spoke very knowledgeably on their topics. Like, I'm not saying that was bad at all. I just really have to wonder, like, who are they really catering to? Because almost all of them up there were like, well, I got my MSP to some hojillion number of dollars, therefore I know what I'm doing and you should listen to me. Or I sold my MSP for $18 quadrillion and I am a master at this. And it's like, okay, so what does it do for me? Like, I'm literally one dude with less than a dozen clients. And okay, where's the stuff that I need to pay attention to? Like, let's dial this down. Let's not forget about the small places. Yeah, that was unfortunately something that also kind of irked me throughout some of the business track.
Yeah,
that's definitely not unique to this show. That's been my complaint for a while. Some of our industry events, there was such a push the last 5 years of like roll up, exit, that we stopped having sessions for, I say it's a love for the trunk slammers. And I think it's short-sighted because you're not always going to be just Kevin. Job was in the chat. Like, John's not always gonna be a handful of employees. Like, y'all are going to grow, and isn't now when we should be teaching you, when your smaller MSPs giving you the strategies and the tips you need to become successful, not just dangling a Ferrari in front of you and saying you should want this.
Yeah, it's that relatability factor. You see this at tons of conferences. I actually made a comment about this at a conference I went to last year where, oh, hey, Kyle. Sorry, that was wow. Where they had people come in and talk that were all enterprise or anything. Like, there was no relatability to what we were actually doing. And I had such a problem with it when I left. I was like, I don't feel like I got much out of that.
Yeah. I agree.
I think Kevin said a very good series of words there. Sponsored sessions. I'm not going to go out and say that all the sessions had payment behind them, but it's kind of what it felt like as an attendee. Even though I'm here as ZenTop, I went as ETOP. I had a very hard separation of, I'm coming here to learn for the MSP that I also represent. And a lot of the sessions felt like someone had paid to sit there and talk to us. The exception, I will always call out Black Hills InfoSec active countermeasures, both for being very good at educating the community and doing cool things, and Huntress as well. Those were the three I keep hearing come up from other attendees too, of like, these are the most high value sessions we went to, because they really focus on just the learning part of it,
Sure.
regardless of how you feel about the value of the content itself. Conferences have to make money. Conferences are expensive to put on. I have talked to people who run conferences, and I did not realize how absurdly expensive it is, down to the coffee. I learned that most conferences will only put a 1 hour shelf life on every single pot of coffee that you bring out, so it doesn't get stale. And whether or not it is empty, they will pull it out and they will charge you some absurdly 3 or 4 digit number for the privilege of having coffee out for 60 minutes. And that's just like, that's one of the shorter costs. And bring in Vegas and it gets even more expensive. So trying to balance that, but balance is the key word there.
Yeah, I absolutely get all that from the cost perspective. For those that are watching that don't know, I'm actually one of the organizers for MSP GeekCon, and I get to see a lot of those numbers fly by. And I see, like, how can I make ROI for the vendors and how can I make ROI for the MSPs? It's actually a very, very difficult balance to try and get that stuff straight. I mean, it is not easy at all. You're going to make someone disappointed, upset, angry, and there's not much you could do about it other than just hope you shoot and hit the most out of everyone, and rounding up, it comes out good.
Well, this is a really good segue into something that Right of Boom is infamous for. That's the mandatory sponsored vendor dinner, and which that was my most popular Spicy Monday video ever. And if you look at like some of the comments, for example, like what Cameron was saying in chat as well, that's an attempt to try to force an ROI for the vendors. But I think it ties into the same concept you're both talking about sponsored sessions. I think a lot of the vendors in our space struggle to be able to talk about the subject matter expertise their product provides separate from the product. And I think that's where the ick factor comes in.
I have a little bit of a tea take on that. I think choice is the most important thing when you are paying to be at a conference and you have sponsored sessions. When I am doing a roadshow for a company, I know I'm going to get sold to, and that's the exchange. I'm getting fed lunch. I'm going out to this cool event center, whether it's like a museum or, an outdoor thing. And I'm doing that knowing that I'm going to have to listen to sales pitch for 4 hours. Cool. I'm going to learn stuff along the way, but that's why I'm there. When you are paying $500+ for a ticket to be there, plus even more, close to $1,000 potentially in hotel costs, depending on where you are, another $1,000 or so in flight costs to get out there. It's not cheap to attend a conference. And it's important to have the sponsors balance, getting ROI on their sessions, but you need to have enough organic community content that you're able to say, I spent $500 to be here and I'm able to get something out of it. Otherwise, if you're going to have mandatory sessions with sponsors that you are providing, then what is the charge to be there for? I mean, you go to the vendor hall and you get sold to all the time. And then you look on your attendee app and then you're assigned back-to-back sessions where you're sitting there being sold to for half of it.
So that was going to be my question. Do you think it would have been nice to be able to, because correct me if I'm wrong, if you were in the business track, you were in the business track. You could not go to the technical track, correct? So do you think having that choice?
You could go the other way. You can go from technical to business only because it was a logistics problem. There is literally not enough room for people in the technical track to go from business to technical. But if someone wanted to skip their technical track and go over to the business one, because for whatever reason they wanted to listen to it, there was plenty of room in the business track room.
There was no way to track who was for what. You could show up to the conference room. No one was scanning badges. You could just show up to whatever room you wanted to and walk in and sit down. And on the technical track, most of the sessions, at least for me, maybe it was a weird glitch on the app, but they were assigned for the technical track. The business track had a lot more choice. I could kind of tell talking to people, but when I was in my app, it was like 12:30 p.m. Go to this room, sit there and learn. It was not a choice thing. So if you're going to have sponsored sessions, again, not saying that Right of Boom specifically did this, but just in general, if you're going to have a sponsored session, having a balance of community sessions to have the people choose where they want to go to, where you can have people pay for it. And if people find value in what you're selling and they want to sit down and listen to you talk about your product or what your product does, then like, awesome, get an audience that way. Make people listen to you because they want to be there and they're going to listen that much more. But also, if you're going to be selling tickets to the event, also give an option for a community-led event where if you don't want to do that, you want to take an hour-long break from being sold to, you can go somewhere and get that value out of it.
Well,
yeah, so my sponsored dinner. So this is another one. I'm probably one of the weird ones that actually be on both sides of that. Last year, I was on the vendor side of things, and this year, MSP side of things. Last year, I don't think I even said the name of my employer once when I was talking with people, other than, hi, I'm the CTO. I mean, that was literally it. And I just had a great evening with folks. Last year, we actually had the majority of the folks show up. This year, I felt so bad for my dinner sponsor. They had 15 people booked, 6 showed up, and they still had to meet their minimum spend. So yes, I got the most expensive thing I possibly could because they were going to spend the money anyway. So you know what? I'm going to get my money out of it. I forgot how many old fashions I got, and you sure as hell I got the biggest steak I could.
Oh my gosh! So you went to your vendor dinner?
I did. It's one of those because I've been on that other side. I want to hear that. Actually, I really like learning what the different vendors have to say. I mentioned before, I'm very active in the MSP community. There's always someone asking like, hey, I have this scenario here, and does anyone know something that'll work? I love the fact that I can go, oh, check out this place. I don't use them, but I've talked to them. I kind of know what their product is. At least check them out. I make nothing off of that, and nor do I want to. I just want to be able to help people. And that's why I really enjoy that kind of engagement with some of the vendors.
And honestly,
again, I feel
that's the best feedback a vendor can get. It's like the word of mouth. Brandon, did you go to yours? Sorry.
Yeah,
I did.
Did you go to yours?
I went to my vendor dinner. It was Slide, and I was very excited to see what they were doing over there. And the food was good too.
We're going to talk about Slide. Don't you worry.
Tara has some thoughts on some of the marketing there, but yeah, I mean, it was good. I enjoyed sitting down with people there, and it's a very different setting than you would normally get at a conference. When you're going to a conference talking to vendors, it's typically in a very loud booth convention hall. You have maybe 5 minutes max to talk with them before they're like, all right, go move on. I want to talk to another person. Not, directly to your face, but there's a lot of pressure to have a short conversation, scan your badge, and move on with your life. You're able to sit down with not just, sales rep at those dinners, but people who are very high in the company. Austin McCord was there. There's CTO.
It's touch tips, not scan badge.
I think we'll get on that one too pretty soon.
Oh, we're definitely going to talk about that too.
I did want to offer a spicy perspective. Having been an MSP for a very long time, that was fortunate to go to a lot of trade shows as an MSP for a decade, then switching to a vendor. There's very few things you will see me play a violin for the vendor side of the industry on. For the most part, I am pro MSP. Vendors, get over yourselves. If you're an MSP and you're sent to an event, or you've been officially assigned to a vendor dinner, you're a piece of shit if you skip out on it without telling anybody. There's no ands, ifs about it. You don't have to go. You need to let them know you're not going. It's not cool. You are screwing people over, and it is rude, and you're limiting your ability to navigate the channel as a customer because we all know each other. And those types of things do get out there. So if you're an MSP watching this and you thought it was really funny to just ditch your vendor dinner, I know Donnie said he did. I'll pick on Donnie. It was really clever to ditch your vendor dinner. Yeah, but no. Like, just send an email. It takes 2 seconds to send an email and be like, hi, I'm not going to be able to be there.
So send an email, but also I have heard feedback from vendors who will not be named that they were a bit disappointed with the spread of people they got for their dinner. People are saying they think it was alphabetical, the assignment, because there were a lot of people with similar last names.
It had to be. Ours was alphabetical.
A lot of the vendor dinners were like, we already have 70.
See, look at that, Donnie on RSVP. Good for you, Donnie.
Okay, good job, Donnie.
That was going to be my question. It did seem like it was alphabetical, right? Which I didn't have a problem with. We had I think 7 people that were supposed to go to our dinner. One person did I gave them my WhatsApp. They messaged me and said that they weren't feeling well. So they opted out. Totally fine. And then there was another person that I knew just standing in the lobby of the MGM, couldn't find his group because apparently they changed the location last minute and it wasn't mass told to anybody. And so I was like, we have an extra spot. You want to jump in ours? So we did. And I love the vendor dinner, guys. I have to be honest, but I hear different companies that team up for it. And they're like, if we do 4 companies together, we can have 60 people there. And I'm like, cool. How good are your conversations with 60 people in a room? Like they're
Yeah.
not, right?
I could
Very
not have
loud.
sold 60 people ImmyBot at my vendor dinner. It was much better being able to sell just one on ImmyBot.
Well, and that's the thing. Like we did our vendor dinner, but I don't think that's a place to sell. And maybe we're an audit. I don't know. But
Yeah.
like our dinner was about getting to hang out with these people. I think 2 people asked about ImmyBot, and there were 2 Emmy users at the table, and they talked about it. And I was like, I'm here to buy you guys drinks and steaks. Like, that's why I'm here, and so that we can get to know
that
you.
point, the conversation at our dinner, we're a learning company. The conversation at our table got into workstation deployments, which brought up the subject of Emmy. And so then a couple of existing partners, me, Wes, spent our dinner talking about Emmy and image deployments. That's why I feel like when you, as cheesy as mandatory opportunities like that are, there's a lot of value there because you're building relationships. Like Tara didn't have to sell to have a different vendor and other partners talk positively about her product and then make that person feel like they got a valuable dinner talking to their peers. They weren't sold Empath, just like they weren't sold Emmy at Tara's dinner. They weren't sold Marketopia at Marketopia's dinner. They, et cetera. Like, show up.
I'm
So
curious.
I'd like to see him keep the dinners. I'm curious. I think they can be improved, right? If there's like a vendor you desperately don't want to go to dinner with, or maybe you just recently stopped using their product, like that's awkward, right? To probably have to go into that dinner with that vendor and be like, oh yeah, sorry, shit canned you last week. Like, I don't know.
I'm curious what kind of.
Let's say, as far as like organizing a conference goes, vendors are secured before attendees usually, or for the most part. I mean, I would think it would be possible that you can display the list of vendors beforehand and maybe even have people pick like, hey, I would like to, or the opposite. I do not want to go to X, Y, and Z. Give a little bit of choice so it actually becomes a bit more optimized.
Sorting hat rules,
that
right?
much effort on the organizers.
I mean, like a ranked choice form is what I was going to say. Like, pick like your top 5, ranked 1 through 5 of you would like to be at their dinner, and then is there any like vendor you don't want to be there for? Yeah.
So one thing I would like to see though, because like this is going to sound pompous, but we do fun dinners, is I don't want all Emmy clients there, right? I want a mix of people I don't know to be like that, so that we get to meet new people, right? So I think something on that, you could say, are you currently an active client? Or are you a past client? Like, just to get some clarity into it, right?
Yeah, just like a checkbox.
Last year we had a past client. We had a past client in ours last year, and he was like dead set against ever using Emmy again because he used it when it was like originally out, and then by the end of the night he's like, you guys are kind of great, like you're just really nice people. It's the warm fuzzy, like he went in with one expectation.
did like the MDT server take him out for dinner instead? What was his other choice there?
I mean, Emmy is a very different product than it was 4 years ago, so I get it. Early adopters, they dealt with a lot from us, but I like the vendor dinners.
We have to make sure we get to the other point of controversy, which was the tip touching badges. And it was interesting because, like many things with Right of Boom, the controversy was split depending on your persona at the show. Thoughts?
I'm gonna say, as a sponsor, I didn't like it because I couldn't put notes in from the conversations I was having. So I was like writing myself notes in Teams because it wasn't like immediately syncing over. And I was like sending myself notes and taking pictures of people's badges. And I also accidentally got on Huntress's mailing list because Jeremy came up to me and was like, let's turn these things green. And then I accidentally ended up on their marketing list. So mixed feelings. It was like fun. Do I think it needs to happen again? Probably not.
It was cool. There's nothing wrong with the QR codes. And like from a vendor perspective, Tara's point, I love being able to put in notes to people when I'm there as a vendor. It was nice to be able to connect with other attendees though, as a vendor, where it's just like, hey, I want to talk to you later. We can do that. But there's a picture of the beacons. So these were all Bluetooth Low Energy. It was all one Zigbee mesh from what I understand. And then you had these little beacons in the hallway that were collecting everything together. So you would tap, someone who was not to be named broke into them. So you would tap your badge, and then within the next 30 to 60 minutes, whenever your mesh connection of your badge reached back to there and then uploaded it to the app, and the app refreshed, you would see contact information in there, essentially. The really fun part was towards the end of the conference, when people weren't clear if you had to put these back in the bins. When we got our badges, no one said anything about returning this because it's just like stuck on. You can pull it off. And towards
even
the end of the
before you go, it was not mentioned. It was a hey, if you could put it back,
so
but no mention of anything.
Still have them on there, so you're both criminals. Andrew, I got them. Bill them both.
Yes. So I had already left the hotel by the time the final session happened.
Same.
I was not physically
on
the MGM premises anymore. There was nothing. The only thing that came through in the app was like, please help us recycle and put these back. And I'm like, I'm a nerd. I want to take this apart. Like, I'll recycle it, but I'll recycle it on my side. But then towards the end of the conference, there were people chatting in different chats or whatever that potentially you had to return it. It was not a please recycle this back so we can use it again. It was a you have to put this back. And then people were like, are we going to get charged for this? Some people already left for the airport. Some people were not on the premises, like myself and Kevin. We had already left. We were in the same room together, and we were like, oh shoot, am I going to get $500 on my credit card now because I still have this? I haven't gotten anything yet. I don't think we're going to see any of that. I never heard anything of it, so I don't want to put that concern in anyone's mind. But when we were there was a lot of uncertainty of like, what happens now? Can we keep these, please?
So I have to ask, what were you and Kevin doing in the same room together? That wasn't an event.
What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, Tara.
It was. You're very welcome, by the way, Cameron. It was interesting. I looked up the company that makes the badges, which got bought by a bigger event company, and there was quite a bit of functionality in those badges that we weren't using at the show. And I think the idea of them at a non-trade show, like with a vendor floor, was really, really clever with a lot of the things they could do. You guys ever have the clicker remotes for a college class? You can do a lot of stuff like that with them. But I think the frustration a lot of vendors had, especially the first day and a half, was there was some lag and confusion between how the lead capture worked, how it went to the app. I think once most of us got the hang of it, it was okay. I mean, it really wasn't any worse to me than scanning a QR code. But I don't know. Tara, did you have a different opinion? Did it drive you crazy? Did you hear from anyone else that vendors that didn't like it?
I mean, yeah, I've heard from quite a few people that they didn't like it. And a lot of it comes down to that notes thing. Because when you're in the booth and having this like conversation with someone, or really anywhere, because you had the lanyard on everywhere, and you want to remember what that conversation was about, right? And not have the same conversation again when you get home with those people. So yeah, I haven't actually heard any vendors that liked it. So take that for what it is.
I love Josh's comments of once they're in the bin, what's stopping someone from just clicking them all together?
Yep.
Nothing.
That's like the ultimate pressing all the buttons in the elevator.
Yeah.
Well, and what would be the purpose of doing that as a vendor would be, of course, if you were not at a level where you had access to a list, which I know some of us were not at that level. And if I had Jason here, we could have a wonderful debate about lists. But since he's not here, we can table that for a different one. But that was not the only thing that drew a ton of eyeballs and excitement at the show. Let's talk a little bit about what you're going to see at every show now going forward. The Austin McCord's dog here.
Me too. Who's your good puppy?
What a good boy.
It didn't even
he does a tippy taps. You can't be mad at that.
So what do we all think of the demon dog here?
I love it.
It's a cool show of tech. I mean, I literally saw one that next day, dry hump a robot with a giant rotating blade on it. So, I mean, they're really indifferent to what they do.
Oh my
God. I think it was genius marketing, because you have slide on the side of it, and every single person in the conference hall had their phone out and they were taking pictures and videos of it. I can guarantee you the slide logo is probably in at least 70% of the camera rolls of the attendees there now. And Dina's a good point. Now that slide has done it and all the other attendees see it, there's going to be a lot of those walking around conference centers now.
Because a bunch of us looked it up, during vendor setup, and that's when I took that video, and we're like, this is like $3,000 to $5,000 on Amazon, depending on which features you get, which is potentially affordable. So that'll be interesting to see if we get a flood of robots, but not so much that I wanted to talk about Slide. That would be an interesting conversation, but Austin gets enough attention already. And I'm sure all of us would appreciate another Dado. So more, what did you all think of that idea as a stunt? Like, do we think like at shows in the future that there needs to be an escalated arms race of vendors having sort of kitschy little stunts like that? Is it going to get out of control? Is it necessary? Does this come back to that conversation of if you could just talk competently about what you do, you don't need any of that? Discuss.
I've seen a lot of very poor taste stunts at the expense of other vendors. And if you've been in the channel long enough, you probably have an idea of who we're talking about, where there was one vendor who went to another vendor's conference and organized a number of flash mobs about like the death of the vendor because they got acquired by another company.
Yeah, it was a little cringy.
Yeah, I think once you start, this is not just for any sort of sales thing. This is just in general. When your product hinges on another product being perceived as not good, your product is just as worthless as that product. You need to show that like you're better in some specific way other than we're not them. I think it's fun to have these little stunts, like as long as it's just like people talking about us. Look at all the cool stuff we're doing. Like Dado did it early on with their road shows where they would drop computers in fish tanks and set them on fire, and then eventually had to tone it back because hotels were getting pissed off at them for setting off their their alarm systems. But it gets people talking. But then when it just depends on the context of it. Like, are you doing it just to drum up information about your name, or are you doing it to like make fun of someone else or some other product?
Yeah, from that aspect,
I heard they got a record amount of demos booked.
Maybe we should just have Austin drill holes through this guy and see what its DR plan is. What's the cloud recovery for this dog?
I mean, if we get enough of these dogs showing up, we could have MSP battle bots, which would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Am I the only person that hated it other than Brian? Thank you, Brian, for being in my corner. I thought it was so creepy.
It is a little creepy. I think the thing that made me feel slightly better is they had to have a control pad to get it to do the tricks. If that was completely autonomous, I thought the same thing. Tara, what show were you at recently where you had a totally autonomous Uber? I was thinking the same thing when you were showing me those pictures. Like, that's a little uncomfortable.
In Phoenix for peer groups. I actually loved that thing. But
Waymos are cool.
Yeah, Waymos are awesome.
So when it's a car, it's fine, but when it's a cuddly robot dog, it's evil.
It wasn't. Did you see that?
Did you try to smuggle with it?
And it could rip your face off. No, I'm not about this.
Your dogs have teeth that could rip your face off.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure there was a Black Mirror episode with like this exact plot point of killer robot dogs.
Why do I show up as LinkedIn member instead of my name?
The robots have already gotten to you, whoever you are.
You're anonymous. Okay. So I'm the odd person out here. It's fine. It's fine.
I just really thought it was very gimmicky. I mean, it did its job. It got attention. It got the name out. So from a sales and marketing standpoint, it was absolutely on point.
Yeah. But did they really need it when you have Austin's name behind your company? Yeah, right? Not. I don't know. Cool.
While we're on the subject of fun, was there anything else that was really fun or surprising, a cool piece of swag, like anything for you guys? You're just like, this was just delightful. For example, Kelvin. Whoops. Sorry, I forgot how to do this.
Oh, hi. There's my face. Do you need help? We're learning. First show, guys.
Fun like this. No, I'm the only one. Okay.
Just reminds me how much Kelvin. I love Kelvin.
Yeah, I think the MSP Geek pre-day, I'm biased because I love everyone over at MSP Geek, but their pre-day was really good, and I heard a lot of people talking about it. I don't know. The hallway con, lobby con, those sorts of like outside the room conversations are always the highlights of these sorts of things. I love how the bar at the MGM is literally just called the lobby bar, which is easy to find because we're like, we're at the lobby bar. Which one? The lobby bar.
Literally, it's called the lobby bar.
Yeah. It's not a thing unique to this conference. Like for me, the biggest value we get is just networking and talking to other MSPs, not like just from a friendly perspective, but also hearing how people are doing things differently. Like Hey, there's my hat. That was fun too. I like the hat. Thank you, Amanda from MSP Geek for that.
Yeah, I say one of the fun things for me was definitely that MSP Geek pre-day. That was quite honestly, from all the stuff I saw, that was the most relevant to Right of Boom, because we literally walked through an incident and what you can do, what you can't do, the follow-ups that each of the people gave afterwards, like using the right words. Most people just don't understand. You can't use the word breach. That's bad. That's actually really bad. You don't use that word. So even forming the correct phrases. Yep, that was me. I went Saturday. That was so much fun.
Real quick, totally off topic. Just tell us about being in the BattleBot studio.
So at one point there was a robot being destroyed literally right in front of me, and the only thing protecting me was a 3/4 inch piece of bulletproof glass. Like, this robot had a 150-pound, 3-foot long spinning blade with hardened carbide steel tips on it. And it was going to town, just shredding this machine. Stuff was hitting the bulletproof glass. I'm like, oh, I maybe should move. But that was pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, as far as the other fun stuff, yeah, actually getting some experience, because knowledge is one thing, but to actually go through an incident response, that is something that more and more people have to go through. It doesn't even matter what part of your company you're in. Everyone at an organization should know what your IR plan is, and everyone needs to know what the role is. Even if the role is like ordering and delivering pizza, that's a huge freaking role for people who need to work on it. We're actually just going to start mounting rotating blades on the booth dog next year.
We're just bypassing teeth altogether.
We're going straight to knives.
Ooh,
rotating knives at that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I think some of the most fun was actually the dinners. Like, because I do like this about Right of Boom, that they don't fill your entire evening up, right?
Yeah.
Like, they end kind of the booth hours a little early, so you still have the ability to go to dinners other than the night of the vendor dinner. So going to Best Friend is still my favorite thing in
fun.
Vegas. So much good food in Vegas. It's the only draw I think Vegas really has, honestly, in my opinion. But I want to do a little round robin because we're getting towards an hour here almost. Oh my gosh, this is crazy.
Yep.
So we're gonna do some just rapid fire questions. So if you could sum up Right of Boom in one word, what would it be? Dean, I'll call on you guys. Okay, this is supposed to be rapid. So.
Like it'd be a sentence, like on my feet, tired.
For me,
tired?
mismatch.
Mismatch. Okay. Brandon?
I'd say growing.
Okay. I'd say whirlwind. It's just such a long week. All right. What was the best swag you saw or got out of the event? I love talking swag, so I had to throw this in here.
The Arctic Wolf puppies were awesome.
This is a flash drive.
Arctic Wolf had puppies?
Sure did. They had little stuffed wolves, and they were super cute.
Didn't see that.
Actually, I'm keeping my tea in here. But Sophos, they all work. Oh, and for Mary, it's Dukevich.
Dukevich. There you go.
And Brian put this up from the chat. I don't want to give away his idea, but Brian had a very clever thing that I have not seen very often vendors do that look for at the next show.
Oh yeah, I got one. It's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it. That was good. I actually really liked I really liked the empath hats. I thought those were awesome. I have mine right over there. And I really liked the CIPP, the little sip cups that fit on like a Lego. Those were so cute. One just showed up in my booth and I was so excited about it.
It's a sippy cup.
It is. It's a sippy cup. I thought those were adorable. Okay. Oh, there we go. I was like, I thought we had a picture. And then, all right. So this is just for conferences in general. Name 3 things. We'll just go in a circle. We'll start with you, Dean. 3 things that you think should be in for conferences moving forward. Not just Right of Boom.
What do you mean in?
Like they should be a must for conferences. Like what's in and what's out. We'll do out next.
Balance of the economy of the conference is one. The next one is vendor employees also need to learn, so they should be welcome. And lastly, I think that having more to do when you don't want to do something.
Fair. All right, Kevin. What do you think?
I'm not going to say, but we're trying to account for all three of those with MSP GeekCon. Just throwing that out there.
Name dropped a lot today.
The one thing I actually really enjoyed at a lot of different conferences were the roundtables, where basically there was some kind of proctor for the room. You get 8 or so random people with a topic, and you just go. I have learned more from those type of sessions than just talk to me sessions than pretty much anything else except for the hallway track. I actually really enjoyed those. I would love to see more conferences that are completely community, not even like vendor sponsored. Like, I don't know how you could possibly do it financially because these things are expensive. But I've seen it done on the developer side of jobs. Still, I would love to see that where you can just get people together and exchange information, 0 sales pitch, 0 vendors, 0 being sold to. You are there to learn. And that's from the attendees point, it's a little bit easier to sell that to your boss. So unfortunately, that's the way things are structured. Those are more expensive. As far as anything else, I don't know. I mean, those are really my top. Like, those are the things I really like looking into with conferences more.
Yeah. Brandon?
Biggest ask for conferences is a little bit more diversity in where the venues are. Especially being on West Coast, I joke that I need to get just a timeshare in Florida because I go to Florida so often for all these conferences. Something in the middle. Dallas is fun. Nashville, even, like, that's still a little bit more east, but it's not Florida.
Boston's not that expensive either, everybody. Come on.
And a lot of these places that we go to that are super touristy are also more expensive. Like Vegas is an expensive place to have a conference, not just like in conference size and location, but like for attendees. Food is expensive. Hotels are expensive. Ubers are expensive. It can be hard to keep up sometimes with that. Another thing I love to see more of is just kind of general chill spaces, like a quiet zone. There's a lot of people who get overwhelmed at conferences and they need a quiet space to go. And if your hotel room is not in the same venue, it can be hard to find somewhere that's quiet to maybe take a phone call.
Zip code, dude.
I was gonna say zip code, not in the same zip code here, bud.
Yeah.
Even if your hotel is where the event is, like, I was in the MGM and that was not quiet.
That was, no. I mean, going from the conference room to the normal MGM towers is like a 10-15 minute walk. But, one thing that I really enjoyed at ChannelCon 2 years ago at the Venetian is they had an area with beanbags and soft chairs. And you could just sit there and you can chill. And it was a nice, quiet place to have a meeting with people. If you had to take a call for work, you could sit down. Or if you were just tired from standing or walking around all day, you had a nice soft chair you could just sit in for like 20 minutes and recharge your battery and then get back out there. Last thing I would love to see more of, I am seeing more conferences do this, have power strips on the tables. If you're providing tables for your attendees to put their laptops, run some power cables so they can plug their chargers into it and have a spot. Even if they don't have to recharge their laptop, they can recharge their batteries and their phones. It allows people to be a lot more focused without having their not range anxiety, but charge anxiety, where you're like, am I going to have enough battery to get back to my room, especially when your phone is the mobile key for some of these hotels?
Ooh,
that's another one with costs, man. The cost for getting those electrical run or the power stations out there. How many IT Nation connects the power bank that who was it? Barracuda normally does. That was outside over at the big hotel. I don't want to guess what 5-digit number that was for them.
Yeah, it wasn't cheap. I saw that perspective. So I'll say that. Yeah. So for me, 3 things I'd like to see in for conferences. I'm probably the outlier here. I love vendor dinners. I would love to keep doing them at other ones. I think they can be improved on. I love seeing people dress however the hell they want. I loved, who was it that wore a pinstripe suit? Someone wore a pinstripe suit.
Rob Chow.
Robert, right. I loved it. And then you see people in like t-shirts and shorts, and I'm like, this is what I think of when I think of the community we're all in. You just kind of come as you are, and I love that. And one thing I think that they did miss the ball on here is it kind of leans into something you said, Brandon. There was so much empty space, like where you went for registration. You could have put couches or tables or chairs there, so people could have like done impromptu meetings or just sat down for a little bit. I think that should be at every show, just kind of a hangout area.
Ballroom, there was that little bit of space, but there was still like maybe a dozen chairs and then that little speaking podium. But yeah, that's nowhere near enough.
No. All right. So we're going to do this super fast because we just hit an hour. So 3 things that should be out for conferences, or however many you want to say in the minute you have. Dean, go.
Vendor hall being open from dusk till dawn. I'm sorry, it's just exhausting. A lack of snacks in the middle of the day. I know it costs more. And absolutely drink the $10 sodas at MSP GeekCon. It comes right out of Kevin's wallet. And out, I guess, still more clear curation of talk tracks. So I guess out with the ambiguousness of a lot of the like talk tracks that you go and select, and more clarity. I want a Spotify playlist that, you know, your high school boyfriend or girlfriend made for you on a CD level of curation.
All right, Kevin, your go.
Oh boy, what do I want out? I would honestly like more time with some of the vendors, just being able to talk with them, not in a room that's super duper crowded where I have to yell. So I don't know how to solve that problem, but it's one where I would actually really like to engage with more of them on a more personal or, you know, intimate level, whatever that translates to. Yeah, Dean, you kind of hit on that one with the costs. So yes, if you don't know me, I actually walk around with beef jerky. I'm now famous for making beef jerky and giving it to people at these conferences. The whole reason that spawned was because I don't want sugar bombs for snacks all the time. It's grossly unhealthy. And so it's like, I just started bringing my own snacks. So I'd rather see some better snacks. Some conferences do a little bit better, but for the most part, it's here's your cupcake, cookie, and 20 pounds of sugar, and wash it down with some pop. Yes, I'm in the Midwest, so I say pop. Let's see, what else would I like to see gone? Yeah, I mean, the big cities, as much as like Vegas is fun, Orlando is fun, let's reduce the costs. Let's move to some, was that tier 3 cities? Or is it the other direction, tier 1 cities? Whatever the lower number is, to start bringing the costs down. Nice, Josh.
Sorry, I just read that. All right, Brandon, your turn. What would you like to see gone from conferences?
Maybe this is because I was in Vegas, but out with the absurdly early morning starts. People are staying out at conferences, and they're staying out late, and that's when they get the networking in. When it's so content dense during the mornings and early afternoons, the only opportunity you have to hang out is afterwards. And it's always fun to see people in their morning sessions start out with maybe half capacity, if that, and then people slowly trickle in, and then by noon, the whole conference actually shows up. I'm not saying wait till noon to start, but like breakfast starts at 9, sessions start at 10. Maybe they go a little bit later, but it would be a lot easier, I think, for a lot of people who are trying to catch up and absorb as much content as they can, not to have to stay out until 1 a.m. on the early side and then get back up at 6 to make it to the vendor hall afterwards. Out like just as we've all said, the expensive locations, just kind of some mindfulness of it does cost a lot of money to go to these outside of the ticket. So the ticket might be priced right, but if you are going somewhere that has a very high cost of existence, that can be hard for people to attend to. And then out with the hustle and bustle. There's a lot of, I don't think it's something that is really controllable by a lot of these conferences, but just drive to go from one thing to the next without breaks. Just some way to encourage more extra spaces where it's like, if you're overwhelmed, if you need to take a break, if you've been talking to people all day, here is a safe space for you to just exist, and you don't feel pressured to go to the next thing.
Hustle and bustle does suck. So for me, just to wrap it up, I would say that generalized content thing, when I was attending as an MSP, that frustrated me because I want something a little more curated for where I am in my journey, I would say. Vegas, I am so done with Vegas. Yes, Brian, I will see you at the end of March. And if you're going to be there at the end of April, I will also be there. So I'm done with it. I'm pulling for Boise, Idaho, guys. Let's go somewhere I've never been, somewhere I have no reason to go, and somewhere that's hopefully not as expensive as Vegas. And for me, 7 a.m. booth time. No one wants to talk to us at 7 in the morning. Sorry. I was out taking people for drinks and dinner till 3 or 4 a.m. the night before. 7 a.m. booth time, not for me.
Well, friends, we are past the hour and wearing out our welcome. Thank you, both of you, so much for coming on today, sharing your thoughts about Right of Boom, making sure we didn't say anything that got us disinvited. Don't ban us, Andrew. And for being a part of what I hope will be the first of many MSP Tea Room episodes.
Yes, thank you for having us. I know we've spilled a lot of tea about Right of Boom, but general appreciation for the effort it takes to put on these conferences too.
Oh, absolutely.
I hope this is all taken as a constructive feedback session for conferences in general and not kind of picking on any particular person or event.
Yeah, and thanks for everybody who kind of watched and is talking in the chat and stuff. This is fun. I thought it was just going to be the four of us talking to each other, so it's kind of nice to see that other people actually tuned in, I suppose.
Well, friends, we had it in the show notes to tease what the next episode is going to be, but I don't think Tara and I have planned that far. So,
no idea. Yeah. We'll figure it out, Dean.
More rambling
see you
soon.
next time.
Not a few weeks. Bye, guys.